I'm sorry to interrupt, but we cannot hear anything for those of us who are online.
We can't hear.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. This is part of the growing pains.
Now you don't know who we are.
There are room microphones in the ceiling that
Don't work very well.
don't work very well.
Okay. John Armstrong, I'm on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
That should work.
Kevin O'Brien, Virginia organizer with the Washington Area Bicyclists Association and friend of the BAC.
I'm Mary Delau. I'm with Bike and Walk Arlington.
Dana Bress with Bike Advisory Committee.
Mike Hanna with the BAC.
Andrea Walker with the Pedestrian Advisory Committee.
Jeff Williams, 22202 resident.
And running technology tonight.
Hi, I'm Michelle Stafford. I work in transportation planning and wanted to point out that there is no chat box tonight per new regulations. So for people who are at home and if you're not able to speak and you want to, you have to raise your hand.
And can we manage to have introductions from people who are online?
Why don't we call them now?
Okay, good idea.
All right, so I'm going to start with.
Eric, make sure the mic's on.
It is on. I'm going to start with Brian Shelton.
Good evening. My name is Brian Shelton, the active transportation planner for Arlington County.
And Allison Bullock.
Hi, everyone. Allison Bullock. I work in DES transportation planning.
Okay. And Kyla? Kyla?
Hi, yes, my name is Kyla Dessa, and I'm here with Kimley Horn.
Okay, thank you. And I guess Anthony?
Hey, folks, this is Anthony Gallo. I'm also here with Kimley Horn.
Okay. And I'm not sure what M is for MP or Solon Phillips.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's Mark Phillips, also with Kimley Horn.
Okay, thank you. And let's see, who else do we have on here?
Dan.
Okay, and Dan Reinhardt, yes.
Hi, I'm Dan Reinhardt. I'm with VDOT.
And Jay Corvallis.
Jay Carvallis.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Jay Corvallis. I'm with JBG Smith.
And whoops, I saw Mark Phillips.
I believe I already introduced myself. Mark Phillips with Kimley Horn.
And Jillian Burgess.
Jillian Burgess on the BAC.
Okay. Jeff Giffen.
Hi, Jeff Giffen with Kimley Horn. And if I could have access to share my screen, I'll be doing the presentation for the Route 1. Please.
Okay.
Ask him if he can share his screen now.
Can you share your screen now?
I do not have access to do that.
Okay. We're working on it for you.
Okay, thank you.
And I see Randy Swart is on as well.
Yes, Randy Swart.
Okay.
Matt Jones.
Matt Jones.
Hello, everyone. Matt Jones from the National Bid.
Okay, and I think that's everyone. I don't see anybody else at this point.
Collier Cook.
Oh, I'm not seeing some of these. Okay, Kyler. I'm sorry, Collier Cook. Sorry.
Yes, Collier Cook, associated with BAC.
Okay, sorry to mess up your name there.
Paul at Chief, that's Paul Pisano.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, hi, yeah, Paul Pisano here.
Oh, okay, Paul, Chief, okay.
Here's Matt Jones.
We did that. I think that's, does anybody else popped on?
That's good enough.
I think that's it. Okay. How about screen sharing? Can we get that?
Ask them if you can share it now.
Can you share your
Yes,
screen now?
I can do it now. I have the access, yes.
Does anybody
Okay.
else need to share their screen?
Does anybody else need to share their screen?
Good.
All right. Get started.
All right, so is there any other business, or are we up first for Route 1?
You were up first.
Or are we up third after your long walk, it sounds like?
Thank you so much for coming.
Yes.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. Jeff, I still don't see your screen. There it comes.
All right, it's up here.
All right, well, as I said, thanks for having us, everybody. We're here to talk about the multimodal improvement study for Route 1. Next slide. So tonight we're going to go through a quick background and overview for anybody who may not have been tracking this all the way through. We'll do a study update. We'll talk about some conceptual designs for the Route 1 Urban Boulevard. We'll talk about next steps. We'll talk, open it up for questions and answers. In 2018, the Commonwealth of Virginia signed an agreement or a memorandum of understanding with Amazon Services, Inc. And in that memorandum of understanding, we committed to reviewing Route 1 for improvements that would improve safety, accessibility, and the pedestrian experience. So that was the impetus for this study. And the goal of the study is to provide sufficient information to make the best decision on a future Route 1 project to meet those goals of improved safety, accessibility, and the pedestrian experience. Next slide. So we started in September of 2020. It was a study. We examined the converting Route 1 to an ACT-grade urban boulevard, and we compared that to some minor improvements as well as the elevated urban boulevard concept that was shown in the sector plan. The limits of that were from 12th to 23rd Street. We did 3 public meetings as part of that study. And that report has concluded and is actually posted on the website. As we concluded that study, we realized there were a few more things that needed to be studied. So that became phase 1, and we started a phase 2 of the study. So that began in December 2021. The phase 2 is to look at additional feasibility analysis, furthering the conceptual design, as well as conducting a speed study. In addition, one of the key elements of the urban boulevard is actually needing to reduce traffic. So we looked in phase 2, we're looking at a TDM strategy or travel demand management strategy to target mode shift out of single occupant vehicles into other modes to reduce the traffic on Route 1. We've had 4 meetings so far in phase 2. And we are working on the phase 2 report right now. We're anticipating another meeting with the public coming up in the spring. I think we originally think it was going to be April. I don't think we're going to make April, but it should still be this spring. Ongoing activities, we're looking at, or we're processing an interchange access report, and we're developing 10% plans. Next slide. All right, now I'm going to turn it over to Jeff Giffen, who's the project manager with Kimley Horn. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. And again, a recap of the concept design from a cross-section standpoint is what's shown on the screen here. This is the typical section from 23rd Street to 18th Street. And here we have about 142 feet of right-of-way. And some of the key elements on this section is the roll zone, which is 6 feet on both sides of the street, as well as a 10-foot walk zone. We also have landscape zones and a planted median. Further north on the corridor, you go north of 18th Street to 12th Street, we do have a little bit more space. So we have a 160-foot right-of-way section here. That extra space goes to the landscape and the walk zones. So in this section here, the roll zones stay 6 feet, but the walk zones increase to 14 feet on either side of the street, and the median and landscape zone gets a little bit bigger. So those are some of the key elements for the corridor. Looking from the plan view standpoint, this shows the overall concept, and wanted to remind folks that who have been coming along for the projects in the previous, and for new folks, as we were going through this process between phase 1 and phase 2, as Dan mentioned, what we learned was that as we try to create this urban boulevard, a slower street that would be safer, the interchange to the north at 395 started to become a challenge. And there was an opportunity that was created when we found out that the flyover bridge from southbound 395 to southbound Route 1 was structurally deficient and it needed to be replaced. So as part of that process, we did look at some interchange modifications to help start the urban boulevard further north. So there are 2 distinct projects. They're interrelated, but they are different projects. Some of the corridor-wide elements that are featured in the improvements are the protected intersections at the signals with leading pedestrian intervals and no right turn on red in most places, street and sidewalk lighting for pedestrian safety, landscaping and large medians, planted medians that will help with the streetscape and provide extra space for pedestrians to cross. Lower speed limit. Right now we are targeting 25 miles an hour. That's still pending a speed study that needs to be approved by VDOT traffic engineering, but that's what we're aiming for. And overall, some of those, the corridor is really designed to have lower speeds because we understand that that's critical for bicycle and pedestrian safety and vulnerable users. Talking a little bit more about the speed study. This is right now our draft of our recommendations. These aren't final yet, so don't get too set on these. Some of the key features here are the curvilinear design. We've introduced some horizontal and vertical curves. The cross-section elements that I highlighted previously, the landscaping, the pedestrian amenities, the bicycle amenities, the new intersections that are introduced with the at-grade configuration, and also the interchange modifications to change that from a freeway to freeway kind of highway to a more urban arterial. So part of this is we do anticipate having a transition in speed from the north, from Route 110, where it's currently 45 miles an hour. What we're proposing, again, not finalized yet, but we're anticipating that having some kind of a transition in probably a 35 miles an hour zone, kind of through the interchange before you get to the urban boulevard. Again, the exact limits are to be determined, but this is kind of what we're thinking. And then to transition to 25 miles an hour. To the south, understand that there's some desire for lowering the speed limit further south of there. That's outside of our study area, but that's something that certainly could be considered if the county wants to look at that a little closer. But that's just something where we are right now. Looking a little bit closer at 18th Street, this is a location that has been discussed quite a bit with the study. One recommendation that has come since the last public meeting is to recommend the all pedestrian phase with diagonal crossings. This was an option that was presented at the public meeting last time. We have done some more research, and this is where we are from a recommendation standpoint. We don't have all the final details yet because we started in that feasibility stage, so a final design is not done yet. But from an operation standpoint, what we anticipate the signal operating is it would have 3 phases. The first would be where all the vehicles would be stopped and have red and no turn on red, so there would be no conflicts, and all the pedestrians and bicyclists could cross safely, conflict free. The next phase would be north-south Route 1 traffic, where the traffic would go north and south, and then lastly east-west on 18th Street. So you would have 3 phases. Again, you would have that all pedestrian and bicycle phase to allow crossing safely. The next slide shows a rendering of that configuration with all of the kind of the highlights. I do want to note that the rendering does not show the diagonal crossing because this was created before that decision was made, but that would obviously be part of that moving forward. As I mentioned, we, as part of the recommendation for the all pedestrian phase, or the Barnes dance, as a lot of people call it, we did look at a lot of different locations across the country. We looked at places overseas, outside the country. These are some locations that we highlighted in the last meeting that we had with you all. We have looked at additional ones since then, looking at places in Los Angeles. We talked at length with some folks in the city of Austin, Texas. There's several all pedestrian phases along Dean Keaton Street in the University of Texas campus. And this one's in particular is interesting because there are bike lanes in the intersection, and there's a floating bus stop, and there's a bike share station here. So we haven't found one in the US or anywhere else where there's a protected intersection with all pedestrian phase, but this was the closest one we found so far, and we continue to explore that. In addition, we are looking at the potential bicycle and pedestrian conflicts at the corners, understanding that having the diagonal crossings does create some potential new conflicts in the corners, and understanding that you all recently just installed the protected intersection a couple blocks away at 15th and Eads as part of the Amazon development. So there's some experience here. It's obviously not the same intersection, but there's some things that we can kind of keep an eye on and use for data points as we move forward. So that was a summary of the high level of the concepts and the improvements and some of the kind of the nuances and tweaks that we've made since then. Dan, I'll turn it back over to you to provide the summary here.
Thanks, Jeff. Should have been more prepared there.
Pardon me. Before you go on, I guess the question I have is how would you like to handle questions? Do we want to wait, or do we want to, I guess, have a few questions as we go from section to section?
I've just got two more quick slides. We don't have a whole lot of new information for you tonight. So let me just finish these and we can get straight into questions.
Very good. Thank you so much.
All right. So in summary, we are still working on the Phase 2 feasibility study report. We will release it in draft and open it up for public comment. It will include the Urban Boulevard concept. It will include the TDM strategies that were presented in the last public information meeting. Just some of the highlights of what's in the Urban Boulevard: new sidewalk connections on Route 1, new pedestrian space on Route 1, providing bicycle facilities along Route 1 in the form of a cycle track that could be used for bikes or scooters, or we're calling it a roll zone, so other skateboards and other wheeled vehicles. Canopy trees along the street, as well as 5.5 acres of land that could be used for non-transportation uses. Next slide. All right, so the next steps. We're going to be finalizing the draft report, as I mentioned. We hope to release that this spring. We are still working on the design speed study with the district traffic engineer. He will ultimately make the final recommendation on the speed. We are advancing the 10% design plans, and we are working on an interchange access report for the 395 Route 1, Route 110 interchange. And that's a document required by the Federal Highway Administration. We are still looking for full funding for both projects. We do have a significant amount of funding for the Urban Boulevard. We don't have anything for the interchange at this point. And we intend to hold a meeting this spring for the public to go over some of the developments that occur this winter and this spring on the speed study and the 10% plans. And that's all I have tonight, so we can open it up for questions.
Okay. Before we get to questions in the room, I see that Jillian Burgess has her hand up.
Thank you very much. I had two questions. One about the speed study. There seems to be an area on the southern end of southbound Route 1 that is not, it's still within the study area, but the southern end of the study area, there we go, that is not green. Just, that doesn't seem like it's proposed for 25 miles per hour. Maybe about that. And then the other question was, I think if you go back one slide, On the roll zone, okay, it's more than one slide, sorry. But yes, so there, where you have the roll zone and the walk zone and a buffer, are you guys envisioning any sort of vertical delineation between those areas, or is you thinking, in the pictures it seems to be, there's no physical separation between those two, which is a little concerning.
Well, so let me take the second one first. So the buffer, we haven't really decided. I think we were anticipating, and what we talked about with Arlington was it would be, there wouldn't be any significant vertical, that we may be looking at a texture, you know, a different type of material, a paver or something maybe rough that goes along there so that there is a delineation between the two. But at this point, we haven't really talked about having a vertical element.
Okay.
And then
I urge you to look at the wharf, which does not have, which has major issues.
Okay. All right. And let me hand it over to Jeff for the 25 miles an hour.
Yeah, I'll just say if you all have recommendations and suggestions for that buffer zone, let us know. I mean, this is still early. We haven't got into a lot of the design details like that, but we'd love to welcome that feedback. As far as the speed study goes, so there's a little bit of difference here, and again, this isn't finalized, so take it with a grain of salt. But what we were thinking is we need a transition or a way to start the 25 zone, and the interchange here makes it a little bit challenging from a signing and kind of change, transition standpoint. So in the northbound direction, on-ramp from the airport access happens very quickly before 23rd Street. So we weren't sure if that was enough space for vehicles to see that and slower the speeds. So that's why we were proposing that further back to start that. Not ideal, it's just because the interchange location is where it is. So that's why it's shown differently. Southbound, right up to 23rd Street, we could get back to the existing 35 without too much trouble. So that's kind of the thought process. Again, to be determined and finalized once we get the speed study finalized. But that was the thought process.
Sorry, so it's southbound where there's 35, right? Where within the speed study on the southern end, it's the southbound lanes that have 35 miles an hour.
Correct. It would just maintain the 35 that's there now.
So why if, we all know how much less safe that is. So why would you maintain that speed there?
It would just be to go back to where it's existing. It seemed like a logical place, but again, this isn't finalized at this point.
I just don't understand the logic. Like, what's behind the logic to leave an unsafe speed limit?
Is it not an urban boulevard anymore?
Because there you get into the interchange ramps and the rest of the corridor, which is 35.
Okay.
Call it a highway again.
I don't know if you heard, there was a comment, does it transition then from an urban boulevard to a highway then at that point?
It would just transition back to the existing street as it is now.
Which is more or less an urban boulevard at that point.
Okay.
Can we request 25? Request 25.
Okay. Well, we would like, I guess as Jillian said, we'd like 25 on the southbound as well. That's, I guess, the room right now.
Especially for the southbound, because if someone's biking, they're going to be biking from a protected facility and dumped out there on that street. And so if they're both losing protection and speeds are increasing right there at the same time, that seems particularly unsafe.
Okay, that's good feedback.
Good feedback.
We can take that back to the.
Thank you.
Can I say something? Am I correct that once you cross into Alexandria, it is 25 miles per hour in both directions?
I believe so.
So why not make the whole thing 25 miles per hour? That would be wonderful. Thank you.
Right now, we're limiting the area we're looking at to essentially our study area. I think Jeff said it earlier. If Arlington asked us to look at the study further south, we're more than happy to do that.
Well, we have one more person here. We have Paul, and then we have one person in the room here. So I guess, Paul, if you want to raise your question.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I guess my concern has to do in Jeff's presentation. He said that one of the goals of this is to make Route 1 safer. And I find that language to be curious at best or misleading at worst, because I don't think there is a safety problem on Route 1 that you're going to improve. If you are going to make Route 1 a urban boulevard, you can make it as safe as you possibly can, but it's not going to be safer than it currently is today for bicyclists and pedestrians who are trying to get across Route 1. I live on 18th Street. When I go to Long Bridge, when I go to the Mount Vernon Trail on my bike, I go under Route 1 and I don't have to experience any conflicts at all now, but I will if you bring it down to grade. So you're introducing more conflict. You're introducing a less safe environment. So please stop using the word safer. You can say you're going to make it as safe as possible, but you can't make it safer than what it is today. Thank you.
That's good feedback. We will mind our language.
Can you pass this to John? Next question, Tom.
I'm not sure if I'm in the camera. Thanks for being here tonight, gentlemen. Question about sort of lane widths. If the speed limit goes down to 25 miles an hour, is it the appropriate lane width so the driver actually will slow down and doesn't feel comfortable going 45 miles an hour? Can you talk a little bit about that, and 11 feet versus 10 feet, or I'm curious what the lane widths are now, things like that.
So I think the lane widths today vary quite a bit depending on where you are. We are going to propose, or we are proposing 11-foot lanes for all the travel lanes, both through lanes and turn lanes. This is a corridor of statewide significance. It is a national highway system route. We need to accommodate all types of vehicles, and some of them can be fairly large. And we're not going to be able to restrict who's in what lane. So we are committed to 11-foot lanes, but we're not considering going lower than that at this point.
Okay. I guess follow-up would be, is that appropriate for a 25 mile an hour road?
Is that appropriate for 25 mile an hour traffic?
Yes, it is appropriate for 25 miles an hour traffic. So we are doing a lot of other things, as Jeff mentioned in the beginning, vertical curves, horizontal curves. Those are going to be used to try and limit that speed. We have met with Arlington County Police. We are considering installing some perches that they could use for speed enforcement along the corridor to try and put the pieces in place to lower the speeds on Route 1. But lane width is not one we're considering at this point. Beyond the 11 feet, I guess I should say.
Thank you.
Yeah, can you briefly describe how you're going to tie into existing bike facilities south of 23rd Street on Route 1 and north of 12th Street? Specifically, how will a northbound cyclist or pedestrian crossing 12th Street get through the expedited left turn exit that you're proposing for 395? Thank you.
So we are not providing any facilities. We're bringing bike and ped facilities down to grade at 12th Street. we're not proposing any dedicated facilities north of 12th Street. So if a bicyclist wants to travel further north on Route 1, they would need to take the lane. Now, we are, one of the questions that we got before this was if we were going to leave the option for a 10th Street connection from Army Navy Drive to Longbridge Park. We are anticipating that will remain in the project, that could be, that we would design to allow that in the future should Arlington decide to move forward with that. If Arlington decides to move forward with that connection, and should it get built with this project, I think we would anticipate extending those facilities further north to 10th Street or whatever that new road would be called, that new connection between Army Navy and Longbridge.
And we also understand that, you all at the county are planning an enhanced facility along Longbridge Drive, so that connection to 12th Street or Army Navy Drive, 10th Street, whatever that's going to be called, could help facilitate that connection to going to the north along Longbridge Drive and across the river.
That answer your question?
They didn't talk about south of 23rd.
Can you talk about south of 23rd?
So south of 23rd, I may rely on Jeff for this, but I don't believe there's any facilities there today. So we would terminate them at 23rd Street until a future project comes along that could extend them further. We will connect the sidewalk across 23rd Street to the existing sidewalk on the south side.
And bicycle facilities would be along 23rd Street, both west and east of Route 1, that would connect to, the bike lanes on each street, as well as the Clark Street bicycle facility. So, until some point where something happens at the interchange to improve that connectivity, we'll set it up for that for future connections. But right now, there's nowhere really to go.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm curious what timing you are anticipating for the all pedestrian crossing and the wait times at 18th Street. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Anthony or Jeff to help me out with that.
Yeah, Anthony, do you want to talk a little bit about the timing there that we've anticipated
Sure.
at this point?
Yeah, and like Dan and Jeff have been saying, a lot of the timings that it's very preliminary to talk about what the specific signal timing plans would be. We did assume a fairly long cycle length, as Dan mentioned. This being a corridor of statewide significance, needing to accommodate a large volume of through traffic that's still on it. We looked at an approximately 150-second cycle length, of which about a third of that, so you think, imagine around 50 seconds would be accommodating that all pedestrian phase.
So we are timing that for pedestrians to be able to get all the way across the street in a diagonal. And we've gotten several comments about the lengths of those crossings, and the intersection is skewed slightly. So one of those crossings is significantly longer than the other crossing at the diagonals. And we are timing it so that a pedestrian can get all the way across that longer diagonal.
Jay has a question.
Jay, you want to go next?
Hi, two quick things. One, you mentioned you were unable to find an example of a fully protected intersection with a barn stance. It happens that there's one in front of our office in Bethesda, on Bethesda Avenue and Woodbine Avenue. So you might want to take a look at that. It works pretty well.
Okay.
The other, Dan, you mentioned, I forget the term you used, a perch in consultation with APD for speeders. I've never heard of that concept. Could you elaborate on what you were alluding to there?
So it was kind of interesting. There's some of the rules that the police, particularly Arlington County, must abide by. They are not allowed to park on the opposite side of the road to shoot traffic on the other side. They're not allowed to stop in lane to run radar. So we need to give them a pullout on the side of the road in order for them to sit there and run radar. So I don't think we have any concepts of that drawn up yet, but that is something that we're looking at in order to give them space to run radar on Route 1.
Well, that's an interesting concept. We're very supportive of lowering speeds. That seems like an extremely inefficient way to do that, but yeah, I guess we'll wait till we see it on the plan.
So we're anticipating this happens down near the interchange, particularly where we're trying to get that transition, people to slow down, to kind of minimize the impact on the city sort of feel as you get south of 12th Street.
And we also have a little bit more space there as well to do that without taking away from the other elements, in the urban boulevard section south of 12th Street.
Thank you.
Hi, can we go back to 18th Street, please? My favorite intersection here.
Sure.
Okay, which of the legs is shorter and which of the legs is longer?
So top left to bottom right is longer.
Okay.
Than bottom left to top right.
Yeah, this is a little bit shorter.
Okay, and west is to the top? Yeah.
West is,
yes.
Yeah, the top.
North is to the right, so yes.
That's too bad, because that's a better leg for most of us. And, the timing of signals. Dana and I spent a lot of time going over your full report and your questions, and thank you for producing that. And I encourage everyone to read it who hasn't read it. It is well worth the time to studying that, and thank you for doing that. One of our questions was, do all of the phases, whether it's drivers northbound, drivers east-west, or pedestrians, do they all have to be the same length of time? Can they vary? We were especially wondering why 18th needs to be as long as Route 1. And I think another one of the issues was at night when there's less traffic and maybe not having an automatic recall for the pedestrian light and our responses, why not have shorter signals for all directions? So those are our questions with that. Thank you.
Well, I think Jeff and Anthony mentioned, we're by no means in a design phase here. We're still in a study phase. So the designers will be looking at that. Our operations folks will be looking at if we can have different cycles during the day and at night, off peak and peak. We have not decided on actuation of the signal. We know that we need to provide the push buttons at all the corners to meet ADA. To announce, to the pedestrians where they are, vision impaired folks where they are, what directions they need to be going. But I don't know that we've really settled on how the signal gets actuated at this point. So that's a good comment that we can consider kind of as this goes to design.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, having designed several signals in Arlington County, I understand that it's standard practice to have vehicles signal actuation on each approaches. That's part of every design. So I would anticipate that would be part of the overall design. So if there aren't cars coming, then that could shorten those phases. And with the all pedestrian phase, 18th Street phase itself doesn't have to be as long as it otherwise would have been, where we would need to have the pedestrian crossing time for that full crossing. So that can also shorten that phase sometimes, especially when it's lighter traffic. So a couple of add-ons to Dan's there. So hopefully that helps answer the question.
Thank you.
Okay, I got two separate questions. One is, if you're looking at the collision risks, you've suggested that the three intersections, 23rd, 18th, and 15th, collectively will be safer with your plan than with the current. And I believe that you're doing that by making 23rd Street suck a little less and increasing the risk at 18th and 15th. Is that correct? Because we're going to go from grade separated, perfectly safe at 18th and 15th to at grade, which has an increased risk. So basically, you're using 23rd as the bill payer. You're going to make 23rd better, and accept the fact that 18th and 15th will be less better. Have I characterized it correctly?
I would say that in the phase 1 report, that is true. I think that with the addition of the all pedestrian phase at 18th Street, I think that conversation changes a little bit. Although Jeff, I don't know if we've run the numbers on that, on the barn stance, as far as, I don't know what the what impact that would have on that safety analysis.
Well, at the barn stance, you're still running the risk of somebody running a red light, which occurs with some frequency in Northern Virginia. So if I'm in the middle of the intersection of a barn stance and somebody runs a red light, it's going to be pretty exciting.
That's very true, and that's true of any intersection. That if people are running the red light, that's a problem.
Left 18th Street elevated. Have there been any T-bone collisions at 18th Street in its current condition?
I would have to say no.
Okay, and the other question was, the answers to your questions. You seem to suggest a much broader geographic catchment for the TDM strategy. Can you briefly describe, without getting into the TDM strategy directly, what you believe the geographic catchment for your current TDM strategy will be?
So I don't know that I saw that question, and I'm glad we phrased it better, because I don't think we were on the same page with everybody at the last public information meeting. Nothing's really changed from our perspective. We are looking at moving people out of single occupancy vehicles into other modes of transportation, whether that be metro, walking, biking, VRE. If Maryland brings MARC down, with the Long Bridge, if they're able to bring MARC service down in, we'll be looking at MARC as a potential option for getting people out of single occupancy vehicles. So we're looking at all modes of travel. I think we're still targeting the employees of Crystal City, Pentagon City, the residents of Crystal City, Pentagon City, as the major users of Route 1 that we're going to try and capture. And because those are the ones that we can kind of control, and if somebody moves away, we're not still paying them to not drive on Route 1. We know that they've changed employers. There's a new employee. We can target that employee. And so I don't think anything's really changed. Maybe we're just stating it a little better. I'm anticipating that the people we're going to be capturing through this are going to come from Maryland. They're going to come from Woodbridge. They're going to come from DC. So I think we're trying to relay that it is a regional strategy and that we're not just targeting Arlingtonians. So hopefully in whatever I said in those comment responses, I was able to convey that a little better.
As a follow-up to that on the TDM strategy, how does the potential for the arena south of here impact that? And I think you implied that the TDM reduction in traffic was required to make this whole thing work. So if the traffic actually goes up, will this concept work?
So the TDM is required to make this work, the urban boulevard concept, as we've studied it in our phase 1 and phase 2 projects. The arena is still a little uncertain. And so we're, if the arena moves forward, we will certainly need to reconsider some of the findings of our report moving forward.
We have a question here. Yeah. If we're going to go with the barns, which is great for our pedestrians, but not so great for them if
bicycles are conflicting with people going across that diagonal. So how are we going to solve that problem?
So Jeff mentioned that we had talked to the city of Austin. So that intersections on Dean Koontz are very interesting because they actually have signage that specifically allows bikes to move during the barn stands during the all pedestrian phase. So we met with them very specifically to find out if they have what kind of interaction they have between bikes and peds. Have there been any complaints or any accidents between bikes and peds at those intersections? And there were not. We found a great example at USC in Los Angeles. We've got a video in the presentation or a YouTube clip in the presentation. There's bikes and pedestrians all over this intersection. We intend to try and meet with somebody in Los Angeles to try and find out some more information about that intersection. I'm glad that Jay Corvallis brought up a protected intersection that is a barn stance. We'll certainly pursue that and find out, what kind of information we can glean from the experiences there.
I have a real quick follow-up on this. If I'm a pedestrian doing the barn stance and I get hit, am I in the crosswalk legally?
If you are following the signal for the pedestrians, then you would be
Anywhere in that whole box?
Everything in that whole box is going to be, the vehicles will have a red. There's not going to be any right turns on reds. We already aren't permitting lefts. Sorry?
So legally, that's a crosswalk, the whole box.
I'm
not sure. We would have to check on that.
We'll have to check on that.
You check on that?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good. That's a good question.
And yes, if Jillian next, please.
Thanks. Thanks so much on your presentation here. If I remember correctly, 18th Street today does not have any protected bike lanes or whatnot, right?
I believe it has bike lanes, but I don't believe they're protected.
It does. It does. They're protected. The new construction, certainly between Eads and Byrne, is protected bike lanes, and it's protected under Route 1 as well, all the way through, at least to.
I thought it was just buffered.
No, it's got the parking lane in between, but it's a designated bike lane. It's not. There's no raised concrete between the vehicles and the bikes, but there is a designated bike lane along 18th Street.
Right. So this would be raised. This just seems like a grade when it comes to traveling along 18th, and it certainly seems like an upgrade when traveling along Route 1. The other thing is, have you guys done any models about the numbers that, the increase in walking and biking that you expect with the transformation to the urban boulevard? Because that's, when we talk about safety and we look at the numbers, the number one change that makes any area safer, at least for people biking, is more people biking. Everything else also has some effect, but the one change that has the most effect is an increase in the number of people biking. And so I don't know if you looked at whether having more protected and more safe infrastructure in the entire area leads to an increase in the number of people biking, which leads to an increase in the safety of people biking throughout the area.
I know we were, go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, we don't have specific estimates for the increase in biking. There are some estimates that some of the new developments has as part of their comprehensive transportation studies that are out there. We did count existing biking and pedestrian activity, and we've estimated some increases, but quite honestly, those estimates in the industry hasn't quite gotten as good as other vehicle estimates and other things, so we don't have great numbers for that. But I do agree that having these will certainly increase the people doing that.
Okay, great. That's how it'd be great to know if you do have counts of people biking along Route 1, north-south along Route 1. That would be interesting, but I don't see a lot of that.
I don't think that there are many, but
Thank
Randy,
you.
next. You're on mute.
Okay, no, I'm not. I had two things. One thing on the arena, whether it collapses or not, as we all fervently hope it will, something is going to be built there. There's a metro station there. There's going to be huge development around that metro station. There always is. So if the arena goes forward, your TDM plan is going to be a joke. If something else comes in, I think at least your TDM plan has to anticipate that somewhere along the line, there's going to be a major development there, and that with the current mindset of Virginians on how they get from point A to point B, there are going to be a lot more cars on Route 1. So I think you really have to incorporate that somehow into your thinking. Second thing is, I've belatedly come to realize that you're not doing a whole lot below, that is south of 23rd Street. I had always assumed, I don't know why, that you were going to carry the project down to at least the bridge across 4 Mile Run. I guess that's wrong. Can you tell me what you are planning if you're talking about 35 miles an hour again, down to Glebe Road and past Glebe Road, where a lot of people cross Route 1 one way or another, either pedestrians or bicycles. What are you planning in that section? Thank you.
So let me take that one first, and then I'll hand it over to Kimley Horn to talk a little bit more about the future projections. So the limits of the study are from 23rd to 12th. Originally, we were stopping north of 23rd. Phase 2, we extended the study to include all of 23rd. There will be some transition south of 23rd just to get back to existing conditions. But that's really the limits of the study. So anything beyond that would need to be a future project. It would need to be considered by Arlington in their transportation plans and come back through another project. And so future demand.
Yeah, so answering the first part of the question about Potomac Yards, and yes, there is a lot of development that was already approved in the Potomac Yard area before the arena was discussed. And as we worked on the traffic analysis and the traffic forecasting projections for our project, we did include the projected development at Potomac Yards. So there was a lot of development that was built into those forecasts. And so that was built into all the analysis that we did. And related to the travel demand management, two different TDMs, we understand that if the arena moves forward, and who knows, as Dan said, that's going to move forward, that's going to likely need its own travel demand management strategy. And while they will be separate from the Route 1, we would anticipate there would be a lot of synergy between the two, because there's just a lot of strategies that would overlap and coordinating with the different agencies. So again, to be determined, but we would anticipate there would be a lot of synergy between those two if those ended up happening.
And so I guess let me add on to that real quick. So all the jurisdictions have comprehensive plans, and they have projections of where they would like their development to go with their comprehensive plan. All the jurisdictions feed those into the MWCOG model, or the National or Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments Travel Demand Management Model. Or sorry, not travel demand management, travel demand model. And so that was kind of our starting point, is, what are the projections in this model, given that future development that all of the jurisdictions are projecting. And so that's kind of where that development from Alexandria feeds into our study, is that was already kind of baked into those future projections. Did I say that right, Jeff?
Yes.
I think we're approaching, you may be the last question here, just to make certain that we stay on time.
Yeah, it's going to be largely just a follow up on that. And, you know, I get that, you know, project has a particular scope and, the, you know, scope, you know, we can't sort of think too much beyond that. Would it be within the, you know, the realm of possibility within this project to at least like offer, I don't know, like suggestions to sort of what, you know, we are doing this project and this project involves this portion of Route 1. But our suggestions for the other parts of Route 1, particularly going south, are, you know, X, Y, and Z, to at least like sort of, you know, plant a stake that hey, like this is how our project is now going to impact or should impact thinking about the comprehensive plan. Obviously, there's less sort of detail in those, you know, the comprehensive plan. But I think to me, it would be a useful exercise to at least have it on paper that, you know, these are the sort of anticipated impacts beyond our project area, and this is what, you know, the suggestions would be, that, you know, you continue the bike facilities beyond 23rd Street, you continue the speed limit, you know, drawing back that speed limit, drawing down it. But anyway, I don't know if that's something that's within the possibility, but just having that on paper, I think, can be useful to be able to point to down the line that, you know, this is now the new reality. Thank you.
So I guess what I'll say to that is Arlington's already developed a sector plan for Crystal City, and that set out a vision for the corridor already. Now, this project has kind of changed that a little bit, but we did try to stay as true to the dimensions that were called out in that sector plan as we could. It did not actually call for bike facilities on Route 1. It called for them on parallel streets, so that is a bit of a change. So we've kind of set that vision forward. Whether Arlington considers, you know, taking what we're showing through this project and feeding that back into the sector plan would be something you'd have to talk about with them. I'm not sure what their plans are for revisiting the sector plan. But the sector plan is really that avenue for that vision for what needs to happen to the south.
I just have one little final question. Because we've all been talking around the arena and all these other complex projects and how they interact. The basic question is, what would happen that would trigger you to do more analyses and modify your TDM?
Well, so for most of the development that's occurring along Route 1 now, that's already kind of baked into our projections. If the arena happens and moves forward, I think we would need to fall back and look at some of the details that we've been planning. That's being done by a separate team, so we're not familiar with all the ins and outs of what the arena is looking at right now. So we would need to take that back and consider what the results are of that analysis. And by no means do I think that their analysis is done either. So that may very well be an evolving.
What they presented, we agree.
Sorry, say that again?
She said for what was presented, she agrees.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. So we have just a little bit of, I guess,
Cynthia.
So we have just a little bit of final business here before everybody goes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
But again, thank you so much. Yeah, you blanked out on us for a second.
No, thank you. And let us know if you have any follow-ups, and we'll hopefully see you in the spring.
All right. Looking forward to it. Dana?
Yeah, I think that the BAC and PAC need to send a letter to the county manager asking them to ask VDOT to extend the speed study all the way to the county line. You know,
Okay.
I don't know how I don't know who VDOT's going to respond to, but let's give it to the county manager and let him figure it out.
I don't know if you all heard that or not, but Dana said that we should ask to extend the speed study all the way to the county line.
That's perfectly appropriate. And my guess is it will be a separate initiative, and so that's something we'll have to work through with Arlington County.
All right. Thank you again.
All right, thank you.
So does I guess county folks have any business that we want to go over very briefly? We were going to leave a few minutes for you to talk about potentially the upcoming meeting that we were going to have on MOTs.
Yes.
Can I hand that off to you?
I have a very short thing to say about that. I checked with Nate Graham today, saw Nate today. Nate took in hand the charge of figuring out how to come back to the bike and ped committees with a picture of how MOTs are supposed to happen. He's not ready to make that presentation. He's working on it, been busy, said sometime this spring.
So not April.
Could not commit to April at this point. And other things, we also have, as staff, met with the reporter problem staff. I spoke with Dana this evening. I know that continues to be a concern of the people on the committee. The woman, our colleague Claudia O'Connor, who manages that program, welcomed direct contact. So I'm going to set up a communication between her and folks who are interested in the ins and outs of the reporter problem. It's possible. I'll ask that. Yeah. I'll ask that. Yeah.
Well, maybe.
And one thing before leaving this talk about Route 1 and the corridor, the sector plan for Crystal City dates from 2010, I believe. So it's ancient. It's way before national landing or any of these ideas. But the county's master transportation plan is about to kick off. They're in the stages of negotiating a contract with the consultant team to do an entirely new MTP, which hasn't been done since 2008 or 9. The bike element is one part of the MTP that was renewed in 2018 or 19. Even that's 6 or 7 years old. But there will be a new MTP coming with extensive public engagement. So these kinds of things are natural for that very involved conversation with the public.
What's the timing on
that? Is Allison still on the call?
I am here. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the timeline.
Thank you.
So as David said, we're working through procurement right now. So we're doing that this spring, but we're looking to kick off later this year. So it's coming pretty quickly. And then it'll be like a 1.5 year, 2-year effort. So we'll be looking at kind of conducting that from late 2024 until 2026.
Anyone else? Well, thank you. Anything regarding Bike Arlington, Walk Arlington that you may want to mention?
I can say 2 things.
Okay.
So very quickly, Bike and Walk Arlington have a few events coming up. So most interest to this group is on April 13th. We're doing a Vision Zero walk with Christine Baker in National Landing. So she'll be showing us some improvements that have been made here to increase safety for people walking. So that's going to be on a Saturday morning from 10 to 11:30. And if you receive the walk newsletter, watch for that in the next week or so. We'll be sending out registration information. And of course, Bike to Work Day registration is open. So that is on May 17th. So we encourage everybody to sign up. Yes.
Are you going back to the old t-shirt vendor?
They will not be in plastic this year. I know that. So,
No, I just mean
sizes?
Well, they just shrank to like halter tops.
They're aware of it. So just in case, probably order a bigger size, just in case.
Jillian.
It's also budget season. And so if you are interested in the budget, now is the time to talk to the county board. The county manager's proposed budget is up. It's on. I'll let you guys Google it. But importantly, there are 2 public hearings. The public expenditure side hearing is Tuesday, April 2nd, and tax rate is Thursday, April 4th. Both of those are at 7 p.m. at Bozeman Center. Yeah.
Thank you. I know we were going to do some business, but we really are getting late. So we have no quorum. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think we'll leave, I guess, a business for the BAC and the PAC tip for and it seems like we'll have separate meetings the next time around because we're not quite ready for the other meeting on the MOT. But is there anything else anybody would like to add?
Mention that we're working on the charters.
Yes.
And everybody, have they got out to everyone?
I believe we've sent it out to most folks. I guess, and I guess we got to be a little careful with everybody who may. There's a lot of people that kind of are listening in on the BAC and PAC Google groups, but essentially we are looking for some final feedback before we send that information back to the client.
Yeah, and if there's anyone who did not receive the draft charter from Eric or from myself who wants to do a really quick review, now is the time. Just send me an email or Eric an email, and we can share that document, and you can give us your input. Thank you.
All right. Have a question?
Well, I just wanted to introduce myself. Hi, I'm Tilly Peterson. I'm from the Planning Commission. I'm actually the Planning Commission liaison to the Pedestrian Advisory Committee this year. So I will be working with Pam and all of you all. If you have any issues about, that you want to bring to the Planning Commission, please do so through me. And thank you very much for your work on our SPRCs, giving the pedestrian input about what we can do to make sure our site plans are responsive to the whole community. So thank you.
And what else are you doing?
Well, I am also running for Arlington County Board, and I was going to try to catch you all to say hello on that front. But in my official capacity here tonight, I am representing the Planning Commission, and yeah, I'm your liaison for this year. So
welcome to come to our meetings anytime.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, if there isn't anything else, I guess we'll conclude the meeting. And thanks to everybody. This is a great turnout. We're so lucky to have good weather and.
Thank you, Michelle.
Yes, thank you,
Yeah.
Michelle. All right.
Let's look up.
Yes.
And if anyone here wants refreshments, I think some of us are still carrying them. So if anyone's starving, I don't think we're allowed to eat in here, but when we get outside, if you want to have a picnic, we can do that. Thanks, everyone.
One final thing. I brought a county car. If anybody wants a ride back to Metro, for example, I could give a lift.
I have a card as well, free space.
I have a car too. I'm going to Clarendon area.
You have a car too?
At the library.
Did we adjourn?
My car is at the library.
Adjourn and close, stop recording.
Is everybody going to be walking afterwards?